very sad cow. Okay, we're doing the narration. This cow fed on poisons. Instead of grass grazing naturally like cows would, it was fed stuff to get rid of so-called pesticides. So this cow eats the poisons, and if you eat the meat or drink the milk from this cow, you would ingest those poisons too. And what happens is it doesn't even succeed in killing the insects because the more resistant strains survive. So this cow has flies buzzing all around its head. Now, this cow got shot up with hormones. So this cow has been shot with antibiotics, and it's a very sad cow because when you take too much medicine, your body can't fight disease on its own. So you lose your immune system. So this is a very, very sad cow. Okay, we're doing the narration. This cow fed on poisons. Instead of grass grazing naturally like cows would, it was fed stuff to get rid of so-called pesticides. So this cow ate the poisons, and if you eat the meat or drink the milk from this cow, you would ingest those poisons too. And what happens is it doesn't even succeed in killing the insects because the more resistant strains survive. So this cow has flies buzzing all around its head. Now, this cow got shot up with hormones. Hormones are those messengers in your body that tell you how you feel and how your energy is going to circulate.
Like all those little cases in your body?
Well, they're not cases. They're sort of maybe liquids or little tiny cells that communicate with each other, the tiniest part of you. And this cow doesn't, well, first of all, we don't need more milk. And the dairy farmers that want to make money, they blew this cow up so big it grew an extra horn. That's poetic license. But anyway, if you drink milk from bovine growth hormone, it could do things to your body that aren't natural. And this is the clone cow that Frank Aurelio hasn't painted yet. But let's have a round of applause for the good artwork of Frank Aurelio, waiting for the cloned cow. Okay, now.
Do you think I can interrupt your game for a minute so I could talk to you and your players?
Oh, sure. We'll come back to it. And you interview the players, because I want to keep them here for citizens.
Okay. Well, they didn't get a real chance to play this game that much, right? So, is there anything you could tell us? How often have you been doing this?
Oh, the Clearwater Festival. We've been coming here for more than 25 years. And we're from Long Island, Amityville, Peasmiths. And we have a music and poetry coffee house and a monthly forum where we've had speakers on this subject. And people write songs about these things. And I think the festival is a wonderful way to get a sort of a break from the suburban culture that we're trying to change and just live in our vision of things for a while. And I think music and self-expression are really the way to get through to people's heart, to have the strength to change things. And so we have a literature table over here, and we're not political in the electoral sense, although we are quite critical of the current administration, and for that matter, the Democrats who were reelected to supposedly end the war and didn't have the follow-through to defund the war, and interested in seeing people work for impeachment and vote their conscience in the election instead of for a compromise, and even vote third party if that's the best choice that we have, although I do think it's important to vote in the Democratic primary, which is why I'm still registered. But we're not a political group. We have people that, we give people that choice, how they want to be electorally.
Can I speak to one of your participants?
Yeah, I don't think they can vote yet, but maybe
What's
we
your
can
name?
talk about something else.
My name is Alex.
Wait a minute, I gotta get out of the way. Go ahead. You ready?
I haven't gotten to play this game yet, but
What brings you to the festival?
well, I came because my parents made me come.
Well, that's not a very bad reason, is it? Sometimes they bring you to some good stuff.
Yeah. So
Are you enjoying the day?
yeah. So far, I painted some little crocodile thingamajig, and I walked around.
That sounds really nice.
Is there any important lesson you've learned by doing this?
No. Well, no, I haven't really learned an important lesson except for a lesson that I already knew,
Which was what?
which was like don't do bad things to animals, and war is bad. And
Sounds like a very apropos lesson. Because there's wars in the world now, isn't there?
yeah, there's a lot of wars, and it makes the countries have bad relationships with other countries. So later, later, a country at any time could attack that country.
How does it make you feel when politicians don't end the war?
Well, I don't feel good because more and more people will die, and then eventually there will only be one country and only a few people.
Let's get some thoughts. Is this your brother? What's your name?
My brother.
Ryan,
And Ryan, did you enjoy your day here yet?
yes.
What did you learn any lessons?
Not really.
How do you feel about war?
Not very good.
No.
Um,
Anything else that you would like to
No.
say?
not
You
really.
sure? Okay. Thank you.
This little
Thank
girl
you.
has something to say.
Do you want to say something, Babette? Turn around so that my friend can see you.
Tell him what you just told me.
Well, I wish that George Bush wasn't president.
Why is that?
He likes war, and I'm not really comfortable with war because one day all the men will be sort of dead one day. So I don't really am I'm not really comfortable with war.
I understand that. Who is this fellow?
My name is Samuel.
And are you related? Oh, Sam, you come out here so we can see you. Are you related to Babette and Ryan?
I'm well,
Or friends?
I'm friends with yes. Me and Babette are friends, but Ryan is not. I haven't met him before.
Oh, you don't know Ryan. How do you like the festival?
I like it. I've been coming for like 3 years.
Really? 3 years. What's your favorite activity here?
Well, I like playing at the park.
Have you experienced the story? The stories?
Those little necklace? I like swimming.
You like what?
Swimming here.
Women?
No, swimming.
Oh, I didn't understand. I like women. I guess I was projecting.
Women.
Did you go out on a boat today? Any of you?
No. We just went swimming in the Hudson River.
In the Hudson River. Imagine that. It's a big river.
But not far out.
Oh, that was clever.
Are you glad that the river's clean enough to swim in?
Yes.
Say that louder. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Louder than that.
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
How do you feel that before it was clean, it used to be dirty, and that's what this festival is about? Do you think it's important that we keep doing this to keep this river and all the rivers clean?
Yes, so people can swim in it, because if we didn't clean the rivers, there wouldn't be any place to swim without chlorine except for the pools.
That is true. That is very true.
To say.
Okay. What's your
I-
name again? Remind me.
My name is Alex. I'm the same person who talked before.
Correct, but I forgot your name. So what do you have to say, Alex?
Well, I wanted to say that if we don't keep the Hudson River clean, all the fish are gonna die, and then there will be an overgrowth of certain animals and bugs, and then and then they'll take over the world. Well, not take over the world. Like they'll they'll kill all the other animals and stuff.
You know, some people think that humans are a form of animal life too. Do you know that?
Yeah, I think.
We might be the animal that does what you say.
Yeah, I think we are, but we should stop polluting the rivers, and because all the animals get their water from it, from it too, so it'll kill those animals.
Well, I hope that when you get a little bigger and more active, you'll help the fight against that very thing that you're talking about.
I'm already doing that.
You're already doing that? Where are you doing it?
Well, I'm doing fundraisers to save the planet and the trees and everything.
That's wonderful.
I've already got a lot of money.
And what do you do with that money?
I give it to people so they stop killing animals.
That's terrific. Well, thank you so much.
Stop chopping down near forests.
You got a lot to say, don't you?
They've already done that once on our street.
Oh, yeah?
And then another time well, they're still fixing the house, and so they cut down a lot of trees, and now it's a house without any trees. So,
Well, thank you for telling us all this.
You're very well informed, young.
In that sense?
Recording.
Hi, Dale. I see you're by the Military Family Speak Out booth. What's the exact reason you're here today?
The reason why I'm here today at Clearwater is because I'm a member of Veterans for Peace, and for a couple decades now, we have tabled here at Clearwater in the form of peace and also reconciliations with countries that we've been at war with.
What is your experience in war?
My experience in war, that's a good question. My experience has been is prior to going to the military, I never fired a gun before. I got drafted in 1969 because I flunked out of college. And pretty soon, about half a year later, I found myself in Vietnam as an infantryman. I was 19 years old in a recon team. I was a squad leader and the oldest person in my squad. I saw combat in Vietnam and also in Cambodia in '70. And the only thing I ever hunted in my life has been other men.
How did you feel after you were retired from that military experience?
How did I feel after I came home from this experience? I came home wounded. I was wounded and spent a year in St. Albans Naval Hospital. And the way I dealt with returning is when I started going back to college after a 2-year hiatus in the Army was to tell people I was hurt in a car accident because I was I was wearing a full weight-bearing brace and crutches, and it was very obviously I was physically injured. The way I dealt with it was to pretend it didn't happen.
That's very interesting. How do you relate to the wars that we're having right now? When I say we, I'm talking about our government.
Yes, how I relate to the things today as compared to, I believe the question is how it compares to my experience from Vietnam. I see tremendous similarities, differences too, but some of the similarities from my point of view between these wars is, number one, this is a war of choice. We did not have to go to this war, either war in Afghanistan or in Iraq. Vietnam, the same thing, it was a war of choice. We didn't have to go in there. They also both are based on lies. In Vietnam with Johnson with the Gulf of Tonkin, lying about those boats attacking our ships, never happened. Same thing with this current war, oil. That's what was the argument that was made for this war. Well, that came out to be untrue. There's similar. There are differences too. In Vietnam, when I went into a rear area, even though I was in a combat soldier, I felt relatively safe. I didn't have to carry a weapon. I could go into a bar. Where they are now, in Iraq, these poor young men and women, they're not safe any place, even in a green zone. They can be injured.
What would you like to happen now?
Well, if someone, what would I like to happen with this current war? Maybe if they made me the emperor of the United States or something, and I would have a choice of what to do, and I could fly to Washington and put on my cape, and I would bring everybody home. I would start the process of healing over there, because this next generation is going to pay for what we're doing now, not only monetarily, but on the world stage and credibility. And what they're doing to the Iraqi people and the poor U.S. soldiers there is just outrageous, because this is going to take a long time to undo, if ever.
Question. How do you feel about the response from the elected officials about the war? I mean,
how do I feel about the elected officials in Congress? That's really a tough question, because I feel that they have fallen way short. I think whatever the political wind, however it's blowing, that's where they're going. I'm very disappointed with this last election. It seemed that we were going to at least start to wind this war down. Instead, the Democrats have backed down. So I'm extremely disappointed in a lot of officials. One official that I am really thrilled to hear about is a local congressman here in New York, John Hall, who is opening up investigations into the treatment of veterans when they return. And I have tremendous respect for him. And time will tell if he can be strong enough to go against the tide of this slow-moving government that we have to stop the wrong.
Well, it's generally believed that this election was about the war, that the the electorate pushed Democrats into Congress so that they might end the war. Now, what should we do from here? If both parties are pro-war, despite the will of the people, what do you think we should be doing?
What should we be doing now that, from your question, you're saying that the last election was about stopping the war? Both our major parties are doing apparently nothing to do about it, and what should we do about it as a people? This is a conversation I've had all morning with my brothers behind me, and it ranges between civil disobedience to boycotts to we're angry. We're angry. And I guess if I was a lot smarter, if I was smart, I probably wouldn't end up in the military dropping out of college. I'm really that smart. I really don't have an answer to do that. But I think that something has to be done, and people should be held accountable, and that's why our organization is starting to go into congressmen, even guys who we've liked in the past, and gals. We're going into their office and demanding answers.
Would you vote for an alternative party the next election? How do you approach now the Democrats and the Republicans? Would you just go to some other party to show them that your power will be exercised the way you want it to be exercised, or what?
If I understand the question, what would I do and how would I vote at the last election?
Next election.
Next election. I let you know I'm a registered Democrat, and the majority of the time I have voted Democrat for the Democratic candidate. That's always not the case. I have gone to alternative. I went green for 2 years for the presidential election. And I would strongly consider a candidate from an independent who is willing to step up, stop this war, help the Iraqi people, and also the shameful treatment of veterans when they return, of overcrowded VA system. And mind you, there's a lot of good people working in the VA system, but it's overwhelmed and budgets are being cut, and which is outrageous the way when people have to wait for appointments, the amount of time. I hear different numbers, and I'm not going to say one because I don't want to commit to it. But I certainly will look very hard at alternative person to vote for.
Question related to that.
You don't have to mean
if the Democratic candidate may give lip service on ending the war, but has a track record of supporting the war, would you seriously consider working towards a Green Party or third party candidate who is absolutely opposed to the war and absolutely supportive of providing veterans their rights, their health care, and their support when they're brought home?
That was a long question. And,
would you support a third party or Green Party candidate
yes, I would.
against the war?
I would support a Green Party candidate who is against the war. I would support the Daffy Duck Party if I think they. I also am realistic, and maybe this is I'm a civil engineer, so sometimes I'm very analytical. My favorite politician today is Dennis Kucinich, but he's too short, will never be elected president, and he's a vegetarian like me. So, and I stand for, and when you look at his platform, every single item I agree with. Every single item, as opposed to the other candidates. But what do? The last election, I bit my tongue, and I voted for the Democratic, I voted for Kerry. I don't like the man. I don't like some of his positions. But I felt that we were at the time, the way the war was, I felt that I'm also a volunteer ambulance rider. I felt I had to do triage and stop the bleeding, and that's what I was doing. I was stopping the bleeding. We can deal with Kerry after the election. And in many ways, I'm also very politically naive, because I didn't think Bush had a chance to be reelected, and I'm still shocked that he's president.
In relation to that, how do you feel about the fact that Kerry didn't fight for a recount in Ohio, but both the Green and Libertarian Party, two different parties,
I am aware that Kerry did not ask for a recount in Ohio, and I'm extremely disappointed. I'm extremely disappointed. And it's not through personal. I'm also a member, besides Veterans for Peace, of Vietnam Veterans Against the War. And though he distanced himself from that for a while, for a short period of time during the 60s, he was a spokesman. Well, he wasn't a leader. He was a spokesman for Vietnam Veterans Against the War. And I respect that. He was involved back in the day when I was not, pretending not to be a veteran. I respect that. But then to turn his back and just to almost say nothing about his former history, I think he'd be president today if he was more honest. I think if he said about his involvement and how he felt about war, he's a person who's been to war, has experienced war, and I just think he didn't use that. And I think if he did, I think we'd be maybe wouldn't be having this interview.
Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate your time.
And thank you for thank you WBAI for being on the line and holding that torch for so long during dark times and lighting it up. So thanks WBAI. Peace out.
Hi, Susan. I know you've been an activist for many years. And what would you like to talk about today, now? What are you feeling passionate about?
Well, I have a personal experience going on that gives me a lot of insight. I've been working on reversing or at least stabilizing my breast cancer for the past 4 years. And here we are at an environmental festival, and for years so many of us have been working to eliminate the causes of toxicity that trigger cancer and other ill health. And I'm always amazed. It's epidemic, as everybody knows, cancer. And when I hear about environmental activists who were fighting against nuclear plants and nuclear weapons, and then when they get diagnosed with breast cancer via radiation mammography, and they're convinced that they need radiation. And to me, this is a continuation of the cycle. And people need to be confident that there are alternatives to the conventional treatments. And I think that a lot of this is the same as everything else we're doing. It's having the ability to question how it's being presented to you and to make one's own stand, but to do it for one's own body. The most important thing, people get afraid and they go for what the cancer industry is spilling out.
People are frightened, and very, very frightened, and they don't necessarily have the knowledge that perhaps you've been exposed to. Where should they go for that knowledge?
Well, I actually developed my knowledge over time because my parents and a really good friend were going through cancer. And the first book I read that really helped me was a book called Options. And it really showed the very well-developed alternatives that include herbs and detoxification and oxygenation and good diet and the much suppressed amygdalin or laetrile, which is something I'm doing. And the book also detailed how the treatments that do work are suppressed by our own government. And I think this is all about campaign contributions and drug companies and perpetuation of the very cycle that makes one sick will give then the treatment, and the treatment is also making people sick. Now, I believe in freedom of choice, and I think that if people, and often conventional treatment thankfully does work for people. Everybody's different. But I think now, with this election coming up, especially in discussion of universal health care, we have to work for the right to equal economic access to all forms of treatment, the right to choose one's form of health care. Now, this is something that is really hard to break through because the people who are pushing for universal health care think, let's just get the bill passed and then we'll worry about that later. But I want to try to influence perhaps what Dennis Kucinich might be saying. Let's see if he has the courage to come out for universal health care that includes the right to choose alternative treatment. Where do you go? I think people make the mistake of looking on the internet research. There's a lot of good information on the internet, and there's a lot of gobbledygook on the internet. So it's really about developing one's own discretion, about knowing how to read stuff and knowing who to listen to, and finding groups of people that you trust, finding alternative practitioners that you trust, and preserving the right of those alternative practitioners to maintain their practice, which is always threatened by New York State and the federal government.
So we're under threat from pharmaceutical companies, from contributions to politicians. What can we do electorally? How do you feel about the major parties now that you've tried for many, many years to have certain things adjudicated through the electoral process?
Well, it's unfortunate, but we think of the Republicans as being more tied in with the corporations. But I'd say particularly in terms of medicine, the Democratic Party, because it likes to be the party that's helping the people, wants to help the people have access to more drugs. And while I do support people's right, and sometimes drugs can be life-saving, to have equal economic access to drugs, if this universal health care bill turns out to be to fund the kind of medicine that people are currently able to access through insurance rather than things that are not covered by insurance because they're always being discredited because the studies are funded by the pharmaceutical companies, then we're going to institutionalize a bad healthcare system. So I think it's very important now in this electoral season to contact the people that are running and also our currently in office officials, and get the candidates to know that there are alternatives that people eagerly want access to but can't afford.
Do you feel it's useless or useful to support alternative political parties who have values that you support with regard to alternative medicine?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I would think that the Green Party would be open to and would be a supporter of alternative medicine, but I haven't actually seen that in the platform. Very, very often people talk about stopping environmental contaminants, but they stop short there from going to stopping what can be, maybe in the short term, getting rid of symptoms, but in the long term, contributing to the problem. So I'd love to see the Green Party take that on. I'd also love to see Dennis Kucinich take it on, and we'll see if he does.
You mentioned the Green Party. Are there any other alternative parties that interest you?
Well, the Libertarian Party, which I find to be really terrible on about half the issues and really great on the things about personal freedom, they are actually very good on preserving alternative health care. And Ron Paul is running for president, and I think he will bring this stuff up because he does it legislatively. But I wouldn't support Ron Paul because of many of the other things, like he's against regulation. The free market will take care of saving the environment and the labor practices, come on. But I laud him for that. So I think we have to push whoever's open on something. But he certainly, on this particular thing, is a valuable contribution to the debate.
Is there anything you'd like to wrap this interview up with? I'd love to hear your most passionate thoughts.
Well, I guess, my thing on the way I'm dealing with my breast cancer, which is totally non-toxic and non-invasive, is that it really goes to my roots as an environmentalist, but also as a pacifist. I don't think you can look at ill health as something that has to be attacked and that one has to conquer. I think it's something that is from within, and it's a redirection of energy. So just like we would talk about resisting war, we would talk about resisting ill health. And in resisting ill health, we put out the healthful energy to express our full potential, which is what activism is all about, speaking out and putting out. So it all ties together for me, and I hope I can be a good example that people can find the strength to do things in the way that makes sense to ourselves, and by that way, that's one route of changing the big picture.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and experience.
Thank you.
It's a sweet view we got. Recording?
Excuse me. Who are you folks and what are you doing here?
We work with an organization called Witness Against Torture. And Witness Against Torture is a group of several people from different grassroots organizations working together to change the situation in Guantanamo. So we organize different vigils and protests in New York City, and we work with people across the country doing the same thing, gather signatures on petitions, and play music to try to get people into our cause, involved, feeling good as humans, and then sort of relate to them on a positive level where they feel like they want to do something nice for other people.
How about you, sir?
Yeah, well, I love the idea of combining music and politics, but it doesn't. A lot of people think that means it has to be like a protest song. But what we do that's kind of different is we just sort of have people playing music, and we have people gathering signatures or talking to people, trying to sensitize them to what's going on. We've chosen Guantanamo because we think it's one of the most horrific things going on right now with our, it's being done in our names. And the idea is when you approach someone with a petition, you're sort of accosting them, and they're going to be sort of a little defensive, and a lot of times you get brushed off. But the idea with the music is people are drawn to music, and they sort of come up to you, and they're like, hey, what's going on here? And then you're like, oh, we're playing music, and we're also talking to people about human rights.
Well, I enjoyed your music, and I listened to more of it than I thought I would. But what is going on in Guantanamo? Could you be more specific?
Sure. I mean, the main thing that we object to is just the fact that there are close to 500 guys there who are not being charged with a crime, and they're not being given what we would call a fair trial. And we think that if you're going to imprison somebody, you should tell them why they're being held, and you should give them a chance to be proven innocent or guilty. And that's just being denied to these guys. It's really simple.
I noticed that some of the shirts you have say "Stop Torture." What is this torture business?
Well, there's actually been a lot of reports that there's torture going on at Guantanamo. And actually, the person who is in charge of Guantanamo has been farmed out to other prison camps because he's so good at getting information from people. So there's a lot of evidence to say that there is and has been torture going on at Guantanamo, and that's something else that many people working in our group feel really passionate about and think is wrong.
I've heard it's said by people who work for some of the security agencies that torturing people is not a good way of getting information. Often the information, or maybe most often the information, is not good. Do you feel that there's any larger reason for this emphasis on torture nowadays?
So, are you asking, is torture a topic that comes up more often now than it used to?
Or is there like a moral basis for
Not
denouncing?
totally sure.
Well, what I'm interested in is, if torture is known by the security people to be not a very effective way of getting good information, what do you imagine or speculate is the reason for this tremendous emphasis upon it by our very highly placed political operatives?
I mean, I think it's no secret that the current administration has been sort of very consciously manufacturing this sense of fear in the population in this country. And when people are afraid for themselves, they'll agree to do things that are maybe ethically questionable. And I think torture is one of those things that, under normal circumstances, people would probably take more of a stand against it. But because we were sort of bombarded with these images of September 11th, and ever since then, the Bush administration has been trying to pump up our fear with these alerts and these warnings, and certainly, there's so much that's based on people being afraid that that's going to happen again, and people feel like, I think they've gotten the population convinced that it's acceptable to torture a few bad guys in order to avert the next disaster.
Question on torture. At one point, there was legislation that John McCain was supporting, having been a POW and having been tortured, that was supposedly going to take a position that torture wouldn't happen by the United States, whether it's real or not is another story. And then he backpedaled and watered down the bill. How do you feel about our legislation, both the House and the Senate, and their position on taking an action on torture or not? I mean, does it frustrate you? Do you think there's something that should be done?
Well, we've been working with some lawyers, um, and a couple of times they've said, we're trying to do our best in terms of the judicial system, and we hope that you guys can keep working on Congress. And I think that it's frustrating to us. Yes, we've been doing this work with the music and the petitions for a little over a year, and with any issue you want to see immediate change, but you rarely do. This hasn't really been pushed to the forefront. I think nobody's really talking about Guantanamo as much as they should be, given the atrocities that are going on.
Why don't you think Congress has been responsive to the issue? Why aren't they talking about it?
I think it's related to what I was just talking about. I think if the population were more concerned and more vocal about that, then Congress would respond more quickly. Not immediately, probably, but I think they would respond, because this is an issue where if they were hearing from us more regularly and more passionately about it, then they would respond. But because they aren't, they assume that when they don't hear anything, I think they assume, probably correctly, that we're okay with what they're doing. And so that's why we're trying to communicate with them via these petitions and let them know, hey, we're not okay with what you're doing.
And I think just the average person is very misinformed about who's at Guantanamo, why they're there. Most people don't know that only 5% of the people at Guantanamo were actually brought there because of military people that found them, and the other 95% were found or brought in by people that were bribed or whatever. So I think that when we talk to people on the street, a lot of people say, well, they deserve to be there, they're the ones who did 9/11, right? And it's just like not really made clear to anybody that no, actually they are not the ones that did 9/11. I think that just how Pierce was saying that Congress doesn't know that people care, a lot of people don't realize that they care because they don't really understand the issue.
May I put a thought out to you? Our congressmen are, for the most part, fairly intelligent people. They know the news like we know the news. Maybe they have more access to more information than we do. They say they're moral people. Many of them, tell us how often they go to a house of worship and so forth. Why do they have to know that we care? Why do you think they don't care, or do they care? What is it about being a person in Congress or in government that you need the pressure from people, your constituency, when the choice is so clear? Isn't it clear that to them, do you think they're informed about the torture and all that stuff?
I think even if you're informed, your job as somebody in Congress is to listen to your constituents, supposedly. So you're going to supposedly do that more. And if most of your constituents aren't saying anything, and the ones that are being vocal are corporations that are making some profit off of war or whatever, then you're going to listen to them because they're the ones talking with money. But I believe that if enough people talk with their voices, then change will happen. It's just, slowly the movement is building for that.
We've just had an election, and Congress was tilted back toward the Democrats, and many people, most people that I speak to, feel that was a mandate, was the constituency telling the congressmen, we want you to get out of Iraq. Now, we don't see a tremendous response in that way. How do you feel about that?
It's really disappointing with the way things have been going just in the past month or so, where if the Democrats really wanted to set a date for troops to be removed, they could have attached that to a bill for war funding. Instead, they put it separately, and it was easily vetoed. Or it's something where if they really wanted to make it happen and put the president in a tricky position, they could have done that by linking it to a funding bill, but they didn't. So I feel like they're still not really they're not really fulfilling that mandate. I mean, I agree with you. I think that's where the country is at, but I think that, we also have this sort of short attention span where there was a sort of build up to that election, everyone got excited, got the new representatives in there, and now I think there's sort of been more of this lull in attention and activity, and I think that people kind of assume that the representatives would do what they said, and they're not doing it. So.
Question. If you find that the elected officials know the information and aren't being responsive, do you think the next step would be to support alternative candidates willing to challenge those in office, third party of any kind, or within a major party, somebody a commitment to getting us out of Iraq, closing Guantanamo?
Definitely. I mean, I think that people challenging the two-party system it's really important that people support them with, in any way that they can, especially financially, just so that they can even, build just the initial support that they need to be included in the debate, to be taken seriously by the press, so that they can actually get some coverage for their ideas. But even someone as, to me, a household name like Dennis Kucinich is getting totally kind of blacklisted and ignored in the media and sort of made to look ridiculous by the mainstream media, when really he's, at least in these presidential preliminary presidential debates, he's the only one who's really saying anything. And granted, he's a Democrat, he's not a third-party candidate, but to me he's saying a lot of the things that we're talking about. But if you notice, he gets kind of shunned. He doesn't get equal airtime, and in the media, in the coverage of what he says, he's always sort of made to look ridiculous. And that's just our democratic system at work at the moment. But I think, if he had more money and if he had more people behind him, maybe the media would start to take him seriously.
Follow-up question, very much related to that answer. If in the general election you have a pro-war Republican, a Democrat who's not likely to pull us out of Iraq, certainly not likely to close Guantanamo, do you think that's a threshold and risk-benefit analysis to support a third-party candidate who's willing to end the war, willing to close Guantanamo, as a position of leverage, even if a third-party candidate can't win? It's a way. Do you think that's a viable position of leverage or a dangerous position?
That's such a hard question.
And they have to face that. So
Yeah,
ultimately you will have to make that decision. So
I agree. Ultimately, you do, and it's so hard. It's a question that any activist in any field comes up against all the time, regardless of voting. It comes up in terms of like basic things, like we could be selling these T-shirts for less money if they weren't made in sweatshops. Like, do you work with the system and like not entirely get everything you want, but maybe get some of the things you want, or do you support something that might not work out, but at least jibes with your values? I don't know the answer to that.
What's your threshold? What point pushes you over the edge? Where does it maybe become, if it's your personal threshold, where does it maybe become the Democrats won't work out and need to do something different? How bad does the Democrat have to be? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think at the moment there are some decent Democrats running. Kucinich, and frankly, if Al Gore were to, throw his hat in the ring, I think he has actually some integrity. The other guys in the field at the moment, I'm not totally convinced. So to me, it depends a lot on the candidate. I don't know about Clinton and Obama as the other frontrunners. Edwards, I don't really feel like I trust that much for some reason, but I don't know. We'll just have to see how it plays out. I'm all in favor of third-party candidates in the long run, but it's hard to know when to kind of sacrifice those short-term, what look like gains, in exchange for a long-run, maybe 50-year vision of getting like a third-party candidate to be taken seriously in this country.
Well, if the past is any lesson, Gore was Vice President of the United States of America. He had already shown a great deal of insight into the environment. He wrote a wonderful book. And he didn't do that much to push those values. And why do you think that he will do it now?
I think what's hard about all these questions is that there's an assumption that when a third party candidate gets into power, they're going to be totally immune to the pressures that the current, anybody who's ever been in power has had. I think that, I don't know, I feel a little bit like in human nature there's a piece that when in power, the animal farm.
In other words, the human being is a corruptible piece of protoplasm. I would agree with you.
Influenceable.
But I don't foresee that a third-party candidate is about to win a race. However, if we show that we're willing to put our vote toward a third party or an alternative candidate, we show leverage, do we not? That's what Craig was talking about before. We show that your power can be used in a way that could harm or help somebody. Now, if they're not going to help you and your values that are so important to us, both actually, and if you don't show them you're willing to harm them because of that, why would they ever acquiesce to go along with what you want?
I just want to add that part of the question is, when you threaten to vote for a third-party candidate, the Democrat, in this case, would likely be the Democrat might have to reconsider their position to get those votes back. If forced to debate, the Democrat might say, well, I'll do that, otherwise they risk losing the election. So at what point, that's why I'm talking about the threshold.
Yeah.
At what point do you think that could provide leverage so that you might hold the Democrat accountable should they win, but they have to negotiate to get those votes?
And let me add that Nader was open to that. He knew he couldn't win.
Right.
He was hoping that some of the things he was asking for and that the leverage he could take over some of the electorate, that the Democrats would want that and preempt him by taking on some of his positions. It didn't happen.
Right.
They preferred to spend $10 million or more to bring him into court in the various states to keep him busy with trying to get the ballot, get his signatures and get the ballot in those various states. They all have different requirements. So I'll put it this way. In my personal viewpoint is, the Democrats have kicked me in the teeth. I was born in a Democrat family. I was a Democrat until the second election of Clinton. I feel that I've been kicked in the teeth enough times to be angry enough to do what I want to do, what my conscience tells me to do. And if they want me back, they're going to have to do some of the things I need and want and believe in. How do you feel about that?
I think you're making a great point. I was remembering how I was in Massachusetts, and I voted for Nader 2 elections ago. And in Massachusetts, it became an issue of we want to get the Green Party on, the table. And I think that was sort of how Nader was framed. So I guess when you were originally asking this question, that's where I was coming from. But now how you're wording it, I don't know. It's a good point.
I think it's just a question of the trade-off between idealism versus sort of more of a strategic, approach. When yes, we all, I think, at least the two of us would probably prefer to see a Green Party candidate in office, and the question is just, does it strategically make sense to support that person now? I don't know. I mean, I'm frankly more of an idealist than a kind of strategist, so I probably would take a Green Party or a third party candidate very seriously and look at him or her really carefully and just compare him to what I think someone like Kucinich or Gore has to offer, or her, sorry, and just sort of vote for whoever seemed like the better candidate. But in those two cases, the Kucinich and Gore have going for them that they're already kind of in the system, sort of taken at least somewhat seriously.
Follow-up question, since you're both making an assumption. It is possible that the third-party candidate can be a former elected official with a track record of having worked either as a governor of congressperson or a U.S. senator, somebody who knows the system as
Yeah.
opposed to an outsider idealist.
That would be awesome.
Again, these are the
True.
thresholds. Would that be a threshold
Oh,
to
yeah.
say that if a third party was a former elected official who had a track record and a voting record and you knew could accomplish things or attempt to?
Let me try.
Well,
let me
you're
let me
sort
try
of
and ask the.
setting
Yeah, go ahead.
Magnifying threshold.
Okay.
You're setting up a very ideal
No, it's
sounding
not.
situation.
But a possible situation.
Perhaps, I don't know. In terms of threshold, I realize that we're being a little bit hard to pin down. And I think what it's coming down to is both of us really wanting to make a personal decision based on the characteristics of that person more than like if they thought this way about
That's true.
that issue or whatever. You know what I mean? In terms of threshold. I think it depends more on the person themselves.
I think campaign finance reform would be great in this country, and many parties, vying for our attention and votes would be awesome, and I'm totally in favor of that. And it's only if it came down to Hillary Clinton versus some Republican, I think just because I don't have a lot of faith in Hillary, I would be very inclined to go with a third party. But if it were someone like Kucinich or Gore, then I would be inclined to look really carefully at the specific, the record of those two guys and think about why didn't Gore do what he should have been doing when he was vice president and other kinds of things, and then make a really careful decision. But in general, I think 3 parties, 4 parties, 5 parties would be really, really healthy, just like they have in a lot of other countries, where it's actually every cycle they have to prove to their voters why they deserve to have any power at all. I think that would be great.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. Do you want to give us your names at all? You can.
Sure. My name is Ana LaGuardia.
My name is Pierce Woodward. I'm a teacher and musician in New York City.
Thank you so much for your time and for what you're doing.
You're
We
welcome.
really appreciate it.